Tadvidi panipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnanam jnanena stutta darshana. When you want to know the truth, Krishna will not reveal it directly. He will reveal it through his representatives. Those pure souls who are living only to broadcast his message to the world. So of course, who was the spiritual master Brahma was going to go to? Because he was the only person living in the entire universe. So therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally became his spiritual master. And it is interesting because you will find in all the great disciplic successions, there are 4 authorized disciplic successions revealing the highest truths of self-realization according to the Vedas. The Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Kumar Sampradaya, and Lakshmi Sampradaya. Within these sampradayas we find everyone has a spiritual master that they approach and learn from. Someone who is embodied, who is the external manifestation of the super soul within the heart. Brahma is the one person who heard directly from Krishna. And why is that? Because there was simply no one else for Krishna to empower as Guru. So Krishna spoke into the heart of Brahma. He heard 2 syllables, tapa. Tapa means to perform austerity. So for 1,000 celestial years, Brahma did not eat, did not drink, did not sleep. His mind was completely fixed in his purpose of life, in meditation on the truth that the Lord revealed to him. And for that 1,000 years, Brahma's mind did not divert from meditation on Krishna for even a moment. And then Krishna personally appeared before Lord Brahma. As we are seeing each other today, in the same way, but in a much higher reality, Brahma and Krishna, they shook hands. And Krishna revealed to him the spiritual world. He revealed to him the spiritual worlds of Vaikuntha beyond this material existence. He revealed to Brahma what is material existence. Material existence is a place for those who have misused their independence. Every living entity has freedom. Why? Because we are all part and parcel of the Supreme Being, Krishna, who is Abhigya and Swarat. He is all-knowing, and he is independent to do anything at any time, in any way he wishes. And we were made by the Lord for the purpose of loving exchange. But there can be no loving exchange without freedom. When the living entity chooses to be the enjoyer rather than being enjoyed by God, he is not fit to remain in the spiritual atmosphere. Therefore, this material creation is a place to reform those living beings who have forgotten their eternal relationship with the Lord by their own choice. It is a place of birth, old age, disease, and death. It is a place where there are miseries caused by one's own body and mind, caused by other living beings, and caused by supernatural forces. It is a place where everyone is searching for happiness, but no one finds what they want. It is compared to trying to quench your thirst with one drop of water in the dryness of a desert. It is not possible. The soul is searching for an unlimited reservoir of water, of pleasure. And the pleasures in this world are like little drops. And within moments, they evaporate. And there's nothing but loneliness, void, and pain within the mind. This material existence is meant to teach every living being that your real home is the spiritual world, that your real occupation is service to God, and everything else is a great illusion. Illusion in the sense that it is not our constitutional position. This material world is real, and the soul is real. The illusion is when the soul identifies itself with matter. And truth is when we identify ourselves as the eternal spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And Brahma was empowered to create all the species of life and all the manifestations within this material universe. And there are innumerable universes, each one with the Lord Brahma being born, each one being spoken, the absolute truth, directly from Krishna. And Krishna also revealed to Brahma at the dawn of creation how beyond this material universe, which has 14 planetary systems, according to the actions of a person within this universe, one either becomes elevated or degraded on the material level. There are hellish planets called the Patala Lokas, where there is terrible, terrible suffering, unimaginable for us. And then there is the middle planets, Bhuloka, like this earth that we are living. And they are also heavenly planets, Swargaloka, where there is beautiful, beautiful arrangements for every kinds of material pleasure and practically no anxieties, as long as your karma keeps you there. But when it is run down, then you also go down. And then there are the planets of the rishis above Swargaloka. There is Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, where people with great, great mystic powers, people who can control the forces of matter to a small extent, like little gods, people who have deep, deep wisdom, and who are no longer finding pleasure like in Swargaloka, simply enjoying their senses, but they are enjoying higher and higher realms of inner peace. And then there is Brahmaloka, the highest planet, also called Satyaloka, where Brahma, the original spiritual master, personally lives and teaches his people the highest truths. And Brahma saw beyond the highest planet in this universe is the border, the viraja, between material and spiritual existence. And when you cross that river, you enter into the Brahma Jyoti, the Paravyoma, the spiritual sky. And those impersonalists who desire mukti or liberation, they can ascend beyond all the planets of material limitations and enter into that spiritual sky, where there is no more birth, old age, disease, or death. But beyond the spiritual sky, floating within on the higher realms, is the planets known as Vaikuntha, the spiritual worlds, where the most perfected living entities eternally reside in the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there is a Vaikuntha planet for each of the various incarnations of the Supreme Lord. For Lord Ram, for Lord Narasingha, for Lord Narayan, for Lord Varahadev, for Lord Kurmadev. And there only pure, unmotivated, loving service is exchanged between the Lord and his devotees in the mood of Aishwarya Bhav, where everyone recognizes he is God and we are his eternal servants. And they worship him with majesty. And Brahma saw, above even all the Vaikuntha lokas, there was one special planet, the suprememost, topmost of all abodes of the Lord. And it is called Krishna Loka, where the Aishwarya, the majestic worship of awe and reverence of the Vaikunthas, is literally forgotten due to the overwhelming sweetness of Madhurya Ras, where the Absolute Truth reveals himself with such intensified and super excellent beauty, where his mercy is so sweet in the sense that he allows total freedom of loving exchange, where you can be Krishna's not only servant, you can be his friend. You can love him as a mother or a father loves a child. Or in the highest Adiras, you can love him as a lover, as the gopis of Vrindavan. And in the highest realm of Madhurya Ras, Brahma was able to see the transcendental loving pastimes of Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world of Vrindavan. And after attaining this realization, by the mercy of the Lord, he was made the original spiritual master of our universe. And all knowledge is coming through him. He imparted the same wisdom to his disciple and son, Narada Muni. And he imparted that knowledge to Vedavyas, who was also the compiler of the Vedas in Badrikashram. And he imparted the knowledge to so many great personalities, one of which was the great Acharya, Shripad Madhvacharya, who traveled by foot from Udupi all the way to the peaks of the Himalayas in Badrikashram. And he went to Adibadri, way, way beyond where human beings can possibly travel. And there he had the darshan of Vedavyas, who imparted to him the transcendental truths and blessed him to spread his message. From Madhvacharya, the disciplic succession has come down. Madhavendra Puri was one such great personality. His disciple was Shripad Ishwara Puri. And then the Supreme Personality of Godhead decided to enter into this world as prophesied in the Vedic scriptures to spread the Yuga Dharma, the recommended process for the highest realizations in this age of Kali Yuga. The congregational chanting of the holy name.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Mahavishnu appeared as Advaitacharya, who was a great devotee of the Lord. He appeared over 500 years ago when he saw the condition of human society in this age of Kali Yuga. Tears of compassion flowed from his heart through his eyes into this world. Because the great personalities, they come to this world not for their own sake, but to help others become eternally happy and free from the miseries of material existence. Advaitacharya saw so much irreligion in the name of religion, so much rampant materialism, sense gratification, and cheating. he understood no one but the Lord himself could possibly establish a system by which these people could be delivered. So fervently, with tears in his eyes, he would go to the Ganges each and every day with his Shalagram Shila, and he would call out so loud. His voice penetrated all the layers of creation, all the way to the spiritual world. This was the power of devotion. He cried out, "My dear Lord, please come. It is your scheduled time, and rescue these fallen souls." On the prayer of Advaitacharya, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descended in the land of Navadvip to propagate the Harinam Sankirtan movement. And he himself accepted as spiritual master in the disciplic succession of Lord Brahma, just to establish the proper etiquette and system of how to receive knowledge. And his disciplic succession has come down from Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda Prabhu. There was Swarup Damodara Goswami, then Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. Later, Srila Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivasa Acharya. And then in that line, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan. And in that line of Baladev Vidyabhushan, one great personality named Jagannath Das Babaji, who was the spiritual master of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Bhakti Vinod Thakur could see that the pure, unadulterated message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which had descended from the spiritual world to give everyone without discrimination access to the highest truths and realizations, it had become degraded. Not only was human society degraded, not only was it being overcome by the materialistic Western ideas of so-called advancement of civilization by technology and sense gratification, but even the followers of Lord Chaitanya, there were only a few who were actually keeping the precepts pure. Others were misinterpreting, misrepresenting, and completely degrading the purest and the highest gift of the Lord. So in the mood of Sri Advaitacharya, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who gave his life to propagate the pure teachings of Lord Chaitanya, he prayed to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with pure and unalloyed devotion that I cannot do this. There is no one here on earth who can do it, to reestablish the truth of your teachings. Please send one of your own eternal associates. Please send a ray of Vishnu into this world to give light in this world of darkness. And in answer to Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur's prayer, that great spiritual Acharya, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, appeared. And it was on the order of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that our own beloved Guru Maharaj, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, has spread the message of Lord Chaitanya throughout the entire world. It is based on the order of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that we are all here today, relieved from the cheating of material existence, happily coming together to hear the glories of the Lord and chant the holy name.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Today is the disappearance day of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. We would like to speak very briefly in glorification of this most worshipable spiritual master, who we all hold his lotus feet so close to our hearts by aspiring to become the servant of his servants. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who was also known as Saraswati Thakur, he appeared in the holy place of Jagannath Puri in the year of 1874. When he was born, his umbilical cord was wrapped around him exactly as a Brahman thread decorates those who are twice born, which is a very rare and special phenomena. And at his birth, when people saw this, they were very much astonished. And one of the great astrologers of the time read his horoscope and proclaimed to everyone that this is not an ordinary person. He is not a human being. He is a Mahapurusha. He is endowed with all the highest excellences of spiritual characteristics. And within his life, he will preach the highest truths and be the greatest servant of all humanity. When he was hardly 6 months old, his house was right on the road where the Jagannath Ratha Yatra takes place. The Ratha Yatra was coming and Jagannath's cart stopped right in front of his house. And no one could move it, however long they tried to pull and pull. In fact, it was there for several days. So the wife of Bhakti Vinod, Sri Yukta Bhagavati Devi, she decided, let me take my child out for the darshan of the Lord. And the pujaris allowed her to climb the ladder to the top of the cart, and she set the child just in front of the beautiful deity of Jagannath Dev, and the child reached out and took the dust of the feet of Jagannath upon his head, and just at that very moment, a garland fell off Jagannath and encircled the beautiful child. And everyone began to call out, Haribo! When Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur heard this, it was confirmed that this child was the fulfillment of his prayer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was named Bimala Prasad, which is a very special name, because for those of you who have gone into the Jagannath temple, within the temple there is a deity of Bimala Devi. Bimala is the pleasure potency of the Lord. And whatever bhoga is offered to Jagannath, it is the standard that that bhoga is first given and offered to Bimala Devi, and then that is distributed to the public. So in order to get Jagannath's prasad, you have to get it from Bimala Devi. So Bhakti Vinod named this child Bimala Prasad. If you want Jagannath's prasad, you have to get it from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Go Premanandi! When he was very young, Prabhupada tells a story. He was hardly 3 years old. His father brought some mangoes to offer to Krishna. But he happened to take one of those mangoes. And Bhakti Vinod said, oh, you should wait until it's offered to Krishna first. This is not good. So this 3-year-old child made a vow. I will never eat a mango for the rest of my life because I have made an offense to the Lord. And Prabhupada said, up until he disappeared from this earth, he never touched a mango. When people would offer, he would say, I am an offender, I cannot touch. This was the determination of this child. when he was 7 years old, actually, what age was it? When he was 7 years old, his father was constructing a beautiful bhajan kutir called the Bhakti Bhavan in Calcutta. And as they were excavating it, digging the ground, they found a beautiful little deity of Kurmadev, the incarnation of Lord Krishna in the form of a tortoise. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur gave that Kurma Murti to Bimala Prasad and taught him how to worship it very carefully. And he centered his life around hearing from his father and worshiping the deity of Kurmadev. Kurma is the form of the Lord that is worshipped for the purpose of giving a very strong spiritual foundation. Because you know, last Sunday we described the churning of the ocean of milk, how the mountain, it had no foundation. So however much the demigods and the demons were trying to churn the ocean and do their seva to Lord Vishnu, without foundation, the mountain was sinking. But Kurmadev gave foundation for all other seva. So by worshiping the Lord in this form, we get stability to perform our devotional service, even in this ocean where there are so many instabilities, so many dangers, so many unknown experiences that are about to come upon us. When he was 7 years old, he had memorized every sloka of Bhagavad Gita. Not only that, he could give elaborate commentary. Not only that, he could totally defeat any opinion that was averse to the pure principles of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. He was such a brilliant student. He was going to school, but he would never read any books except those by his father and Narottam Das Thakur. And he just wasn't interested in the other books. But still, he was always top of his class and had the first class highest grades in his exams and in all of his learning. He was so brilliant. He would hear something once, he would never forget. In this way, he was always absorbed in rapt attention in wanting to hear from his father. Such a small child. You children, you could learn from his example. When he was 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, when Bhakti Vinod was speaking, or any other great acharya was speaking at Bhakti Vinod's house, this little boy would sit in complete absorption, rapt attention, absorbing and learning everything, and never forget. He was so determined. He was so sincere. It was so impressive upon everybody. When he was 13 years old, his father gave him a Tulsi Japa Mala that he had received from Jagannath Puri, and he gave him the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. And he also gave him a Narsingha Mantra. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, by the age of 13, he was worshipping Kurmadev for spiritual stability. He was worshipping Narasimhadev to protect him from all the dangers of Maya. And he was chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to purify his heart for the highest destination of transcendental love of God. When he was 16, he was going to school, the most brilliant student, absorbed in studying Bhakti Vinod's books. He started an organization called the August Assembly. And the August Assembly was just his friends. But to join it, the only thing you were allowed to talk about was bhakti and spirituality. And you couldn't join it unless you took a lifelong vow of celibacy. So many of his friends were impressed, but he was the only one that fulfilled the vow. It is explained that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was given a scholarship in this Sanskrit College of Calcutta. And there, he was such a brilliant student. He was brilliant in mathematics. He was considered the greatest of astrologers. He was a great learned scholar of Sanskrit, philosophy. In fact, while he was at that college, he read every book in philosophy and religion in the entire library and had every one of them memorized. And he wrote his own books. He wrote a book called Surya Siddhanta in commentary. And he was given the award of the title Siddhanta Saraswati due to his great scholarship. And he was becoming very well known. And they even offered him, when he was very young, the seat of being a professor in the college. But he didn't finish college. Did you know that? He left college. And he writes in his autobiography why he left college. Because he felt if he had a high education with honors, everyone would expect so much of him that it would be natural that somebody with so many educational qualifications should get married and should have a very responsible post in material society. And he understood if he had a high education, he would be highly pressured for marriage and material affairs. But he wanted to give his whole life simply to serving Krishna. He didn't want to marry. He wanted to become a brahmachari, so therefore he left college and never got degree. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki! But it is not that you can imitate him. He was a great soul. But he did not want anything or any pressure to in any way impede his service to the Lord. He was not concerned with profit, adoration, distinction, classification. He was only concerned with whatever was best for service. When he was young, at this time, Jagannath Das Babaji, who was the spiritual master of his father, he came from Vrindavan to Navadvip. And Jagannath Das Babaji, seeing Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, how learned he was, and what an incredible professor he was of astrology, he asked him to make the Vaishnav calendar with all of the dates of the previous acharyas' appearances, disappearances, all of the dates of the festivals for the great incarnations of Lord Krishna. The Vaishnav calendar that we follow to this very day on the order of Jagannath Das Babaji was originally produced by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And one time his father was invited to a conference. It was a very important conference for the whole Vaishnav world, because at that time India, throughout the land, was victimized by the selfish motivations of people who were in high positions within society. According to the scriptures, the Varnashram system is by one's guna and karma. Chatur varnamayastristam guna karma vibhagasha. That means according to the qualities you have and according to the work you perform, you act according to that occupation. But it had become degraded to the standard that to be a Brahmin meant you are born in a Brahmin family. And the Brahmins of the time who were ruling the society religiously, they were exclaiming that Bhakti Vinod Thakur and the pure Vaishnavas, their teachings were against the Siddhanta of the Vedas. Because the Vedas teach, if you are born in a Shudra family or lower, if you are devoted to God, if you are a Vaishnava, you're higher than a Brahmin. If you know the science of Krishna, it doesn't matter where you're born or who you're born and what body you're born, you can be a spiritual master for the whole world. But they were saying, unless you're born Brahmin, you cannot wear this 2-paisa thread. Unless you're born a Brahmin, you cannot teach another Brahmin. But Bhakti Vinod Thakur saw. Shyamananda Goswami was not a Brahmin. But Rasikananda was from the highest Brahmin caste and he took initiation from him. Ganga Narayan, Ram Krishna, they were of very high-class Brahmin families. And they took Diksha from Narottam Das Thakur. So there was a big battle going on. And this conference was to once and for all settle this dispute. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur, the most learned and empowered acharya at the time, was asked to speak. And the great Vaishnavas were depending on him. The leader of the Radha Raman temple in Vrindavan, Madhusudan Goswami, the leader of Shyamananda Goswami Sampradaya in Orissa, they were depending on him. You must come. But Bhakti Vinod was very sick. He had high fever, and he could not come. So he was calling out, is there not any Vaishnava anywhere in the world who can put down these degraded rascals who are degrading our whole Vedic civilization with their selfish motivations? Because such people, their being Brahmins was not to elevate the masses in spirituality. It was simply to make money. They had no good qualities. But they had arranged society that if you performed sins, the only way to atone for the sin is to give them money for them to perform puja. They didn't teach you how to give up sin. They taught you how to pay them when you do. They were being adored, respecting, and making tons of money. And then there was the Goswami class, who were born in certain seminal lines from previous pujaris, who were the servants of Goswamis. And they were keeping their deities simply to make money. Many of them were atheists. They didn't even believe. They just saw the deity as a piece of stone, but because it's a popular stone, because it's been around for hundreds of years and worshipped by so many great souls of the past, everyone will come and give donations. So the Goswamis and the Smarta Brahmins, they were preaching against the Vaishnavas. So Bhakti Siddhanta heard his father calling out, and he wrote a paper explaining what is a Vaishnava and what is a Brahmin, and what is the relationship according to Shastra. And when Bhakti Vinod Thakur read that paper, he became ecstatically blissful. He said, now the Lord has sent his messenger. Now all irreligion and all cheating will be dispelled. destroyed by this empowered soul. So Bhakti Siddhanta went to Midnapur, and at that conference, first the Brahmins began to speak. And they were explaining how only if you are so fortunate due to previous births of so many pious activities can you be born in a Brahmin family. And only such a birth can make you glorious and worthy of the spiritual world. What to speak of teaching others Vedas? No one else should touch Vedas. And then the Vaishnavas asked Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati to kindly speak. And he went and he took his elevated position and he began to speak. And the first half of his lecture was just glorifying Brahmins. And all of his enemies were very happy. They were so satisfied, thinking, oh, he's on our side. He's the leader of them, but he's on our side. And as he was glorifying the Brahmins, they were becoming more and more and more and more and more pleased. And then he began to explain, what is a Brahmin? And then their hearts were broken. Their minds were cracked. And he established that a Vaishnava is one who surrenders to Krishna. Yari de katari kaha Krishna upadesha maragoi guru hartare desh. Kiba vipra kiba nyasi sura kebenai. Je Krishna tattva veda se guru hoy. That Lord Chaitanya explained, whether you are a sannyasi or a shudra, doesn't matter. If you know the science of Krishna, you can be guru for the whole world. And that everyone has the power, if they just hear the message sincerely and repeat it and live by those principles of being accepted as a Brahmin, and more than a Brahmin, being accepted as a pure devotee of the Lord. And he explained through so much scripture and so much evidence that after he finished, there was an uproar of applause by the innocent people, and the Brahmins were silent, the caste Brahmins. And then after that, there was 3 days of debate amongst everyone. And anyone who rose a word against what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati said, he just cut them to pieces, all their arguments. And at the end of the conference, he spoke for 2 hours. And he invited any challenges. And not a single person could speak a word. At that time, the Vaishnavas were dancing in ecstasy. The innocent general people were just applauding and just calling out the glories of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And the caste Brahmins, hiding their faces, ran from the scene. And the people loved him so much, there were thousands of people there. They all wanted to take the dust from his lotus feet. But he would not allow people to touch his feet. But there were guards, there were police there, and they were thinking it was a riot. It would be a riot if they didn't get the dust from his feet. They forcibly took his feet and put it in a bucket of water. And then they went out to the crowd and started throwing the water on everyone's heads. And everyone was satisfied. And throughout the whole Vaishnava world at that time, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, whose name was at that time Siddhanta Saraswati, he was declared to be the greatest defender of the highest truths of the Shastras. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was helping his father in so many wonderful ways. At one time he was living in Jagannath Puri with his father. And the most famous person in Jagannath Puri amongst Gaudiya Vaishnavas was a man named Radha Raman Charan Babaji. Radha Raman Charan Babaji. And he had tens and thousands of disciples. But even he would come to Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's lectures. But he was inventing different mantras. And he was also sometimes dressing his followers up, men followers, as gopis. And there's a famous mantra he made up, Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Hare Krishna Hare Ram. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta, they were saying, this is not a good mantra. It's mixing different rasas. It's a concoction. It might be very melodious and it might sound very nice, but it is not approved by our philosophy or by our acharyas. And this dressing followers up as gopis is not also. So in this way, they told Radharaman Charan, you should stop doing these things. It is not proper. But he was very proud. He had many followers, and he did not want to admit his mistake, so he continued. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati and Bhakti Vinod Thakur began to preach against these discrepancies. He was what is called a sahajya. Sahajya means one who takes everything very cheaply. And in the name of devotees, there are many, many sahajyas. They imitate ecstatic symptoms. They actually learn by practice, just like movie actresses and movie actors. They also can do this. If you practice, you can do so many things. Where during kirtan, they cry and tears flow and they start trembling and they roll on the floor and they howl. And then everyone starts giving them money and worshiping them as being great, great bhaktas in ecstatic love. And other sahajyas, they teach that Krishna had Ras Leela with gopis. And I am your guru, I am Krishna's representative, and you are a young girl, so you should have Ras Leela with me. This is still going on. In fact, most of Vrindavan and these holy places, this is what is going on in the names of Babajis. It was the commonplace. Illicit activities in the name of self-realization. I was told by one of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples, prominent disciples, that one time this Babaji came before Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And Bhakti Vinod was polite to this person. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who was a young man, he was there, and he completely ignored him. Everyone is offering obeisances to this Babaji. Everyone is worshipping him. Bhakti Siddhanta would not look at him. So he asked Bhakti Vinod, why your son doesn't even look at me? And Bhakti Vinod looked at this Babaji very honestly and straightforward. He said, because my son hates sahajyas. So he never came back. Of course, the great souls don't hate anyone. They love everyone. But they hate injustice. They hate that principle which cheats people from understanding real truth. They hate the principle of exploitation. They may love the person who's exploiting because the soul within everyone's heart is pure. But they hate the disease because it is causing so much harm and so much illusion, and is the cause of the repetition of birth and death. In 1905, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur took a vow to chant 1 billion names of Krishna. And the way he decided to do it is he was going to chant 3 lakhs every day. That means, following in the footsteps of Srila Haridas Thakur, he was chanting minimum of 192 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra each day. And he was residing at the Yoga Peeth, the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Navadvip, Mayapur. And for 4 continuous years, he was chanting like this. And then they were given some land at the place of the house of Chandrasekhar Acharya, which is called Brajapatana. And then he moved there, near the bank of the Ganges, and he was living in a little hut. And for 9 years, he remained in Mayapur, chanting 192 rounds every day, until he finally completed his vow of chanting 1 billion names of Krishna. He was also following Chaturmasya at the time, where he would sleep on the ground with nothing between him and the ground, no pillow, and he would cook some little rice and dal khichdi every day with his own hands, and he would eat it like a cow. He would put it on the ground with no plate or thali, and then he would put his hands behind his back, and he would bow down, and he would put his head down to the ground, and whatever he could eat before having to take air, and sit up. As soon as he sat up, he was finished until the next day. He did this for 9 years. Chaturmasya. And sometimes it was raining during the monsoons. In Mayapur, Bengal, it floods sometimes during monsoons. And the roof would leak, and he would sit with an umbrella in his hut, and sit with an umbrella, loudly chanting the holy names.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
One day a great devotee from actually, just before this happened, one great devotee from Vrindavan named Gaura Das Babaji came to Navadvip. He was a disciple of Bhagavat Das Babaji, who was a disciple of Jagannath Das Babaji. And when he came to Navadvip, he was wearing a tiger skin hat. And he had a little basket with all kinds of prasad articles from Vrindavan. And when he first came, he saw Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he gave him his hat, which was actually a gift given by his guru. And he also gave him a little stamp for tilak with the names of Krishna. And he gave him a piece of rope with knots in it to chant japa. And Saraswati Thakur became very much attracted to Gaura Das Babaji's devotion. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur told his son that you should take formal initiation from Gaura Das Babaji. Because without initiation from a proper spiritual master, you cannot make proper spiritual progress. Because that connection of the mercy of the Lord is imparted to us through the process of Diksha. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati approached Gaura Das Babaji, and with great humility and devotion, he requested that he give him initiation. But Gaura Das Babaji had never initiated anyone in his whole life, and he had absolutely no intention on anyone being initiated. And besides that, Gaura Das Babaji was illiterate. He could not even write his own name, and he could hardly read. And Saraswati Thakur was the most learned scholar in all the world. How can I be your spiritual master? You are so highly educated, And I am so simple. But Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati explained in reply that all education, all knowledge, all learning of the scriptures, it is all useless unless we are using it all in the service of a great soul like you. So if you will, kindly accept me. So Gaur Kishore Das Babaji refused out of humility. But Thakur Bhakti Vinod insisted to Bhakti Siddhanta that you must take initiation. So he came back, and with so much genuine humility and devotion, he requested Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, who replied, I have not initiated anyone in all my life. I have no intentions, but if you ask me so sincerely, I will personally ask Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when I next talk to him. So sometime later, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta came to Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and said, did you talk with Lord Chaitanya? And Gaur Kishore Das Babaji replied, yes, I spoke with him. Well, what did he say? I forgot to ask him about you. Next time, please ask him, yes. And then the next time he came, he asked Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, what did Lord Chaitanya said? Gaur Kishore said, he told me that I didn't have to initiate you. And then Bhakti Siddhanta began to cry. He began to weep, tears of such genuine humility. And he said, I am so fallen. I am not deserving the mercy of the Lord. I am not deserving your mercy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his representatives like you have come to give mercy to the most fallen. But I am so fallen, I am so lonely, that I have no right to your mercy. Therefore, without the mercy of the Lord, what is the use of life? I have no reason to go on living. Without the spiritual master and without the mercy of the Lord, this human existence is just a dreary void. In this way, before Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, in a puddle of tears, he decided to end his life. And when Gaur Kishore Das Babaji saw the genuine sincerity of his eagerness to surrender to the Lord and to receive his mercy, he told him, I will give you initiation on this day. You go to the river Saraswati and take your bath and come back. So he took his bath in the river, and on that holy day, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji gave him initiation. And throughout his life, he never gave another person initiation. One time in Navadvip, people were criticizing the Gaudiya Vaishnavas because in their Gayatri they had a Gaur Gayatri mantra. For those of you who are second initiated, you know the Gaur Gayatri mantra. There are two. They were saying this is not authorized because they did not believe that Lord Chaitanya was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They accepted him as a great prophet, a great teacher, an empowered sannyasi. But what makes you think that he is God? And this was going around not only in Navadvip, but even in Vrindavan. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati organized a lecture and a debate in the town of Navadvip. And there he very forcefully explained, according to scripture, how Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he quoted from the Atharva Veda, Chaitanya Upanishad, He quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam, Sveta Svatara Upanishad. He quoted from so many varieties of scriptures that he irrefutably established that Lord Chaitanya is the Yuga Avatar and is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And no one could possibly speak anything against him. But something very special happened. In that assembly, as he was speaking, hiding in a corner, nobody saw, was the spiritual master, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, listening to the words of his disciple. And he was so pleased that Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was so proud and pleased that he called him Prabhu. He was praising his Prabhu, his disciple. And when he saw the austerities and the knowledge of Bhakti Siddhanta, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji would say, such austerities, such knowledge is truly on the merit of Srila Rupa and Raghunath Das Goswami. This is my Prabhu. In the year of 1914, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur disappeared from this world at the Bhakti Bhavan in Calcutta. And in the year of 1915, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji disappeared from this world. He was living in Kulia, which is the modern-day Navadvip. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was the very living embodiment of renunciation. As you all know, just to keep away from materialistic people bothering him for material benedictions, he would go into places that materialists would never want to go. You see, sadhus are meant, you should approach a sadhu with the desire to hear the truth, with the desire to serve, not with the desire to solve, to gain material benedictions or solve your materialistic problems. Sadhus have no patience for these things. But materialistic society, they always want these things. So Gaur Kishore Das Babaji would sometimes do his bhajan in the latrine where people would go to pass stool and urine, where nobody would want to go. He was so renounced, so pure, always absorbed and completely immersed in chanting the holy names. He was so transcendentally situated that sometimes he would just eat the mud from the Ganges as his prasad. But when he left his body, everyone knew what a great Paramhamsa he was. And all the Babajis of Navadvip, they all wanted to claim his body because they all wanted to make his samadhi. Because they knew Gaur Kishore Das Babaji is the #1 most famous Babaji and Paramhamsa in all the land. And whoever has his samadhi, people will come to see it and they will give money as donations. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, he was living across in Mayapur Dham. While he was in Mayapur, as you know, Bhakti Vinod Thakur discovered Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. And it was Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati that actually built the temple and excavated the grounds. As they were digging the ground, they found the deity of Adhokshaja Vishnu, the original deity that Lord Chaitanya's family worshipped. It is still in the temple today. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur took a boat across the river Ganges, and he came to Kulia. And there was a big debate, who was going to get Gaur Kishore's body? And there were police constables there, because they were so afraid there was going to be violence. And Bhakti Siddhanta said, I will take his body. And the Babaji said, this is bogus, this is nonsense. Because at that time, Bhakti Siddhanta was still a brahmachari. They said, you are not a Babaji. You are not a sannyasi. How can you touch the body of a Babaji? We are Babajis. We deserve the body of Babaji. Bhakti Siddhanta said, I am his only disciple. And I am the only one amongst you who is following his teachings. He said, my Guru Maharaj is absolutely pure. And only someone who is as pure as him can touch him. So amongst you Babajis, any of you who have not had illicit sex with a woman, because Babajis are supposed to be totally renounced, within 1 year you come and take his body. If you have not had sex within 1 month, you come and take his body. Within 1 week, you could come and take his body. Any of you here who have not touched a woman within 3 days can come touch his body. And the police inspectors, they said to Bhakti Siddhanta, should we do an investigation to find out who has done what? Bhakti Siddhanta was so bold and he was so grave, he stood before all of them. No need for investigation. I will take their word. But they were so fearful because they all knew they were guilty that every one of the Babajis, one by one, turned their backs and walked away. And the police and the people in general were shocked. And then some of the people said, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, before he left this world, he asked us that when he died, we should drag his body through the streets of Navadvip. And Lord Chaitanya said, this is his humility. He is trying to teach us the principle of humility. But my Guru Maharaj, his body is fit to be held by the hands of God himself, not to be dragged through the streets. When Haridas Thakur left this world, Lord Chaitanya personally picked up that body and danced in ecstasy with it. This is the caliber of my Guru Maharaj. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati made a beautiful samadhi for Gaur Kishore Das Babaji in Kulia. And 16 years later, because of floods and the changing of the current of the Ganges, he brought the whole samadhi to Mayapur, where it is situated today on the banks of Sri Radha Kund at Chandrasekhar Bhavan. Actually, that day is very special in many ways. Just before Gaur Kishore Das Babaji left his body, he was giving lectures in Kulia. And one very intelligent young man from Calcutta, he came to hear Gaur Kishore Das Babaji speaking. And when he asked him more questions, Gaur Kishore told him, you should go to Siddhanta Saraswati because he is my Guru. Here is the Guru calling his disciple his Guru. This was the humility of Gaur Kishore. So this person, his name later became Kunja Bihari Vidyabhushan. He went to hear Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur speak, and by hearing him, he became completely convinced. And Bhakti said he was working in Calcutta, and Bhakti Siddhanta told him, take leave and come and be with me for some time, for some months. So the day he got his leave, he arrived in Kulia, and it was the day that Gaur Kishore left. And he witnessed all of this. And he was telling Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati that you should leave Mayapur, you should preach to the world. The world needs your message. And this echoed the words of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji in Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's heart. When he took initiation from Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, and throughout their relationship, Gaur Kishore said, you should preach the absolute truth of Lord Chaitanya's teachings everywhere, and you should have no other business and no other disturbance than this. And it was Bhakti Vinod Thakur's dream that the message of Lord Chaitanya be spread throughout the world. But after Bhakti Vinod and Gaur Kishore left this world, Bhakti Siddhanta was plunged in such an ocean of transcendental ecstatic separation. He didn't feel he had any power to preach. And besides that, he had no money, he had no contacts, he had nothing. How was he going to preach? But one night, he had a vision, a dream. And in this dream, the Panchatattva, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Gadadhar, Srivasana Dvaita, they all stood before him. And along with the Panchatattva were the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all dancing and chanting in transcendental kirtan.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
And standing besides Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and all the associates of the Lord were Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Jagannath Das Babaji, and Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. And they all together spoke to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And they told him, go out and preach. We are with you. We will never leave you. We will empower you. You have our blessings. All contacts, all support, everything will come. You just go out and preach and know for certain that our blessings, our power, and our very presence will never leave you. After this vision, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati understood that it was time for him to fulfill the mission of his life. This dream is very similar to Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada was on the Jaladuta at the age of 70, crossing the Atlantic Ocean on a cargo ship, going to America, he had no support, he had no contacts, he had nothing, no money. He was in the same situation as Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. He just had 2-3 heart attacks, and he had the same type of vision, where Krishna with all the incarnations were on a boat and told him, we will bring you across the Atlantic. We will always be with you to fulfill your mission. So Kunja Bihari Vidyabhushan, who later became known as Srila Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj, after he initiated Kunja Bihari Vidyabhushan and some others, and he understood he was going to leave Mayapur and start traveling and preaching, he decided it was necessary for him to take sannyas. Now, who could give him sannyas? Usually you take sannyas from your guru, but his guru had disappeared. When the guru is not there, you take sannyas from your godbrothers who are sannyasis, but he was the only disciple. He had no godbrothers. And there was hardly anyone who was actually representing the pure teachings except his line. So it was on the evening of Gaur Purnima, not evening, it was in the day of Gaur Purnima, that he, 1918, he placed a picture of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji in front of him, and he took the vows of sannyas according to the the rituals and the principles of the Ramanuja Sampradaya. He took his danda, took the mantra, made his vows, performed the yajna in the presence of his Guru Maharaj's picture. And it was from that day that he officially became known as Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami. And then he went to Calcutta and began his preaching. So Kunja Bihari Vidyabhushan, who later became known as Srila Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj, he arranged for a little house to be the first temple of Lord Chaitanya outside of Mayapur, of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. It was in Calcutta. The address was 1 Ultadanga Junction Road. And on the ground floor in a little courtyard was deities. And on the first story the brahmacharis lived. And on the second story there were a few grihastha couples that lived. And on the roof, the terrace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had a little room. And he began to initiate more and more people. And each night he would give lectures on the roof. And one time he took about 23 of his disciples on tour to various places where they were preaching vigorously. And meanwhile, he was starting presses to print books. He was fervent in printing books. He was printing Bhakti Vinod Thakur's books, Narottam Das Thakur's books, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's books, Madhvacharya's books, Ramanujacharya's books. He was writing his own books. The Sajjana Toshini. He began a daily newspaper, a weekly newspaper, a bi-weekly newspaper, all different newspapers, magazines. All at once, he had presses set up in various places. He was so dynamic to distribute the name of the Lord. At one point, he had a radio station. It wasn't his radio station, it was the Indian Broadcasting System, but he had his own show just to teach the public about Gaudiya Vaishnavism. He began Dairam exhibitions. Beautiful, beautiful, through the technology of the time, little clay dolls. And some of them you would pull string and they would move like this. And they would just depict the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the message of Bhagavad Gita. He called the printing press the big mridanga, because the mridanga in Harinam can be heard for 2 or 3 blocks. But through publishing literatures, the message could be heard throughout the whole world. It was in 1922. Abhay Charan, who later became known as A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One of his friends named Narendra, he invited him, please come to see one very good sannyasi that I have met. Srila Prabhupada explained that ever since he was a little child, he was always the leader of all of his group of friends. And if any of the friends were going to accept something as good, it had to be endorsed and authorized by Abhay. So please come and meet this good sadhu. And our Srila Prabhupada, he said, I have seen so many sadhus. Because when he was a little boy, his father, Gaur Mohan Dey, would feed no less than 5 sadhus every day. And many of them were smoking the chillums. And sometime Prabhupada said when he was young, he would see people just living the most degraded lives. From his window where he lived, he would sometimes see. And in the morning, they would leave their wife, and their children or some prostitute or whatever, and then they would just put on the robes of a sannyasi and they would go out begging, and then they would come back and with their money. That was their occupation, to be a sadhu. So Prabhupada said, I do not care to see sadhus. I have seen so many sadhus. But this one is different. So Narendra literally pulled him. Srila Prabhupada was born in a Vaishnava family. When they went to the roof of Ultadanga Junction Road and they saw Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati sitting with his back erect, speaking from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Abhay offered his obeisances. And just as he was getting up, he heard the thunderous but sweet and merciful voice of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, who told him, you are intelligent young men. You should take these teachings of Lord Chaitanya and spread them throughout the world in the English language. And Srila Prabhupada was very astonished. I have not even introduced myself and he's giving me a lifelong mission. And he began to argue. He said, Swamiji, that we are he was a Gandhian at the time. We are a dependent nation. Who will listen to us? The need of the time is independence from the British. After we become independent from the British and get out from under their thumb, then we will have credibility and dignity. Then the luxuries of preaching Harikatha could be. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained that all these politics are temporary. The only real problem in this world is a lack of Krishna consciousness. And the only solution is Krishna consciousness. It is the eternal dharma, and is the eternal necessity. And it cannot wait for any change in politics, any change in any situation. It must be now. There is only one truth. And that truth is the only solution to the problems and the sufferings of that world. And that truth is devotion to Krishna. When Srila Prabhupada heard these words, he was convinced. And Srila Prabhupada told us that at that very moment within my heart, not officially, but within my heart, I accepted him as my spiritual master. Later on, Srila Prabhupada moved to Allahabad. And some of the disciples of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati were starting a temple there. And Prabhupada began associating with them. And I believe it was in 1932, was it? Yes. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur invited thousands and thousands of people to Vrindavan for the Braj Mandala Parikrama. And there, it was such a well-organized yatra. They had so many tents for everyone to live in, and they had kitchens, and they would move it every day. They would stop at one place, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, there was a big tent where he would give his lectures to thousands of people each evening. Then there was a kitchen that would cook prasad for them. Then everyone had their tents. The sannyasis were in one area, the brahmacharis in another area, the grihastas in another areas, the pilgrims in other areas. And there were guards and there were torches for light at night. It was an entire city set up. Then the next morning, after Mangal Arati, they would start walking to the next place, all 168 kilometers of the Braj Mandala, the Kroshas, and they would take it down and set it up in the next place, and the next place, and the next place. And when they were in Vrindavan, the caste Goswamis of Vrindavan, who were running the temples of the original Goswamis, they were very much against Bhakti Siddhanta's teachings. Because he was teaching that anyone can be a guru and anyone can be a Vaishnava and anyone can be a Brahmin if they just surrender to Krishna and chant the holy names and have the qualifications. And because these men did not have the qualifications, they were being exposed. When Bhakti Siddhanta and his people came to Vrindavan, people were throwing stones at them and threatening them. In fact, some of the leaders of the Goswamis decided to have a discussion with Bhakti Siddhanta about this. And after hearing his scriptural understanding, they were all silent. They said, yes, we have to agree with everything you say. But still they kept all the doors to their temples closed, so Bhakti Siddhanta and his people could not come in. He faced so much opposition because he was preaching the truth. Srila Prabhupada told us that once Bhakti Siddhanta personally told him that they have tried to kill me. One time, a policeman came to Bhakti Siddhanta and said, please be careful. Some of these people have bribed me 25,000 rupees. That was a lot in those days, in the 1930s. 25,000 rupees. We will kill him, you just don't do anything. He said, generally, we're policemen. We're from India. We take these bribes. It's part of our life. But you are a great sadhu. I cannot do this to a sadhu. So please be careful. Srila Prabhupada met Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati at Koshi, the place of Nanda Maharaj's treasury. And one of the sannyasis of Gaudiya Math announced that today we are going to Sheshashayi Vishnu temple. Anyone who wants to come, please come. But Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur will also be giving lecture. So everyone went to Sheshashayi Vishnu, except a few of the main sannyasis of the Math and Srila Prabhupada. He was thinking, what will I see the Lord? I will see him more in the words of my Guru Maharaj. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was preaching for hours and hours and hours. And Prabhupada was just sitting there listening. Prabhupada told us that my Guru Maharaj spoke in such high language that sometimes I understood what he was saying and sometimes I didn't. But I was just so satisfied, just taking in the pure vibration of his katha. And people were coming and going and coming and going. But Srila Prabhupada sat and listened at the feet of his Guru. And the next morning, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati left the parikrama, and Srila Prabhupada was there to offer his obeisances. And Prabhupada went back to Allahabad. About a month later, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was coming to Allahabad to perform the cornerstone ceremony for the erecting of a new temple. And the president at the time was one brahmachari named Atulananda. And he was recommending people for initiation. And when he recommended Abhay Charan, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati looked at our Prabhupada and he said, yes, I will initiate him. He listens very nicely. He does not go away. And then Srila Prabhupada took first and second initiation together on the same day, and he was given the name Abhay Charanaravinda Das. Srila Prabhupada was always so eager to serve his Guru Maharaj. At one time he shifted his business to Bombay. Srila Prabhupada was renting a little flat at Grant Road. And one day he was walking in the street and he happened to meet two of his sannyasi godbrothers, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. And they told him, we have been sent by our Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to start a temple. So Srila Prabhupada made his first priority in life to help them find a temple. And the three of them would go out preaching each night. Prabhupada would get the contacts, Prabhupada would set up the programs, He would bring them, he would introduce them, he would lead kirtan, Srila Sridhar Maharaj would preach, Goswami Maharaj would raise funds, and soon they had a beautiful temple. Not far from here, 5-minute drive hardly. And then they invited Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati to come to Bombay to install the deities. And at the initiation ceremony, Srila Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj told Bhakti Siddhanta Prabhupada, he said, this Abhay Charanaravinda, what a great preacher he is. He should not be away from us doing this business. He should be the president of the temple. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati said, no, let him be away from you now. In due course of time, he will do everything. Srila Prabhupada ki. That great prophecy was made just a few minutes from here in Bombay. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati decided that the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should go beyond the borders of India. He had established 64 mutts in India, 64 temples. And he also established 108 padapits. Padapits means and even today, when you go to Mangalagiri, or you go to Singhachalam, or you go to Tirupati, or you go to Srirangam, or you go to Kavur, where Ramananda Rai and Lord Chaitanya met. At all these places you will find a little Gaudiya Math shrine with Lord Chaitanya's footprints installed by Bhakti Siddhanta. He also started a beautiful temple in Kurukshetra, and a wonderful temple he started in Madras. And it was in Madras that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur decided that now is the time to send our men abroad. The message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not confined to any sectarian idea. It is the universal principle of religion. Love of God, which is common amongst all religions, and how to achieve that love by the congregational chanting of the holy name. There's a very famous lecture he gave as he was sending 3 of his disciples to England and Germany to preach the message of Sri Chaitanya. In 1896, his father and Shiksha Guru, Thakur Bhakti Vinod, sent a book entitled The Life and Teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the West. He sent it to many universities throughout the West. And the first one to reach the shores of America was at Macmillan University. Because he had such a dream that Lord Chaitanya's teachings be affordable to everyone, everywhere. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati decided to send Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha Maharaj, who happened to be a disciple of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who took sannyas from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And one of his very senior sannyasi disciples, whose name was Bhakti Hriday Bon Maharaj. And a very great scholar and writer named Sambidananda Prabhu. These 3 men he dispatched to England. And he gave instructions to them before they left. And those instructions are eternally documented as they were written down. You see, in those days they didn't have tape recorders. But the disciples of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, especially 2 of them who were very learned, Ananta Vasudev and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they would just sit and write down exactly. Actually, did you know that when Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was only about 15 years old or something like that, he invented a whole system of shorthand writing. He was brilliant in every field. So his disciples would write down every word he would speak. Better than tape recorders. Because they have bhakti. Tape recorders, sometimes the electricity goes off or the battery goes out. Sometimes the tape goes, it gets wound up. And with these men, they would just, every word he would speak was just noted and published. Many of it was published. So this was a very, very special event at the Madras Gaudiya Math. And in essence, he explained to them that if you want to teach the supremely great teachings of Lord Chaitanya to people of the Western society, there are 4 principles you have to live by. And if you live by these principles and teach by these principles, you are guaranteed to be empowered and successful. Who knows what those principles are? Trinadapi sunichena, tarorapi sahishnana, amanina, manadena, kirtaniya sadad. If you want to spread the glories of the holy name, you have to be more humble than a blade of grass. You have to be more tolerant than a tree. You have to be ready to offer all respects to others, and you expect none in return. If you live by these 4 principles, Krishna will empower you to spread the glories of the holy name throughout the whole world.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
And then he taught them how to preach. He quoted Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur, how he would preach. There was a prayer. He says, I take straw between my teeth and I get down on my hands and knees and I beg you, my dear brother, please give up the illusions of Maya and take the holy name of Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
He said, when you go to the West, you will find that materially they are far superior than you. As far as their material education, their technology, their wealth, their standard of living, their mannerisms, everything. They may all be superior to, but never be attracted to these things, because they are not worth anything. You simply keep your attraction fixed only on hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. And whether they are devotees of the Lord or materialistic people, you must consider yourself the lowest of the low. You must consider everyone is better than you. You must consider yourself to be the servant of all. And in this mood of humble service, you have to crash through all illusions of these people. And you have to give them Hari Katha and Hari Kirtan.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
So these sannyasis went to England and they started a small center in London. And later on, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati sent Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj to England to help them, because he was not satisfied. He wanted Krishna consciousness to be spread in a big way. He wanted people to fulfill the dream of Lord Chaitanya. Priti Vityacha ati nagaradi sarvatra moranam. In every town and village they should be chanting his holy name. These men were doing good work. They met the king, King George, and the queen. Special audience with them, and he met Bhakti Saranga Maharaj met Lord Jetland, Lord Jetland was a very good well-wisher. He asked, "Can you make me Brahmin?" And Goswami Maharaj said, "Yes." "Well, what do I have to do?" "No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating." Lord Jetland said, "Impossible. How will we live without these things?" So the sannyasis who were sent there were thinking, we can make them favorable, we can make them appreciative, but to make them Vaishnavas, impossible. It's already, Lord Jetland has already endorsed it's impossible. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had great hopes. And it was Srila Prabhupada who ultimately fulfilled those hopes. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur lived simply for the service of all living beings. He was so humble. Even his own disciples, when they would come before him and offer obeisances, he would always greet them as Prabhu. And he would address them with the words, "Dasosmi," I am your servant. By his example, although he was so great, so majestic, so powerful, he was so humble, so gentle, so compassionate. His heart was filled with the sweetest, ripest fruit of divine love. In 1933, he performed the Navadvip Parikrama with his devotees. Thousands of devotees and pilgrims were there. And when they came to Navadvip town, the caste Brahmins and the Goswami class, they were very much offended by his preaching. He was preaching against Sahajiism, he was against the polluted caste system, he was against polluted Brahmanism, he was simply preaching everyone has the right. Whether you are a man, whether you are a woman, whether you are a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew or anything, if you chant the holy names, you can attain the highest perfection and make disciples all over the world. But these people did not like. So as he was coming through Mayapur or Navadvip Dham, the caste Goswamis, they actually hired hoodlums and gangsters by the dozens and dozens and dozens, and also corrupted the minds of so many townspeople. And they were spitting on them and throwing rocks and bricks and stones at them. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati told them, do not retaliate, just take the name of Krishna. And he himself was being hit by rocks and stones, as well as all of his disciples. And they just carried on dancing through the streets, chanting the holy name.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
It was said that the dogs may bark, but the caravan will roll on. In 1935 also, on his 61st birthday, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was in Jagannath Puri. And at that time, Srila Prabhupada was living in Bombay. And at the Gaudiya Math here, he wrote a beautiful, beautiful offering, which included a wonderful poem that he read to all of the fortunate and blessed guests who honored that occasion. And Srila Prabhupada's offering was so beautiful and so philosophically perfect in capturing the essence of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's life and soul, his mission, that it was sent to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And there was one famous verse in that poem. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity, thou hast removed. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is a person. The impersonal aspect of the Lord is only one of the Lord's energies. It is not the highest realization. It is not in any way even desirable by a devotee. The idea of becoming God, the idea of losing your eternal personality and individuality is like spiritual suicide. That in the ultimate sense, according to the revealed scriptures and according to the realizations of the greatest acharyas, the absolute truth is a person. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Ishwara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadira Dira Govinda Sarava Karana Karanam. His beautiful body is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And the bodies of all of his associates are eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And every spirit soul has innate within it a spiritual body, a spiritual personality, a spiritual form, and a special, unique relationship with the Supreme Godhead. And the highest realization is to go back to that realm of spiritual existence in which we become an integral part of the Lord's Leela or pastimes, to serve his beautiful, all-attractive, all-pleasing personality forever. And that is bhakti. That is prema. That is real love. But in this world, impersonalism has become so rampant. The impersonalists misconstrue and cheat people with the misconception that ultimately the Absolute is formless, without personality, unlimited, and that impersonal Brahman temporarily takes a human form when he comes into this world in the mode of goodness, just to teach us all to go back to merging into the existence of himself. That the forms of the Lord are illusion, the forms of the Lord are temporary, that this world is illusion, that everything is illusion that has form, that has name, that has variegatedness, that has personality. Material form, material variegatedness, material personality is illusory. This world is real, and the soul is real, and God's form is real. And the ultimate understanding that we are not of this world, but while we are in this world, we should use the things of this world for the service and the glory of Godhead. And unless we accept the Lord as a person, we cannot develop pure love. So this impersonalism is a calamity. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati came to remove that and establish Krishna. When Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur heard this poem of Srila Prabhupada, he was so overjoyed and pleased that everywhere he would go, he would read it to whoever he would meet. And he would say, this Abhay Charanandavinda, he has understood the essence of my heart. And when the devotees would hear him praising, they were thinking, just as Rupa Goswami wrote a verse explaining the way Lord Chaitanya was feeling in his love for Lord Jagannath. And Swarup Damodar said, he has understood your mind because you have given him your special mercy. The devotees of Gaudiya Math understood that Srila Prabhupada had received the same mercy from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Prabhupada ki! It was in that same year of 1934-5 that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur went to Radha Kunj, where he lived there for over a month. And Srila Prabhupada went to visit him with his son. And they spent many long hours together discussing so many subjects. And one day, as they were walking on the banks of Sri Radha Kund, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur told Prabhupada that when we were living in Ultadanka Junction Road in that rented house, everyone was enthusiastic to preach. Everyone was satisfied with whatever Krishna provided. But now we have been given this beautiful, beautiful, spacious marble temple at Bhag Bazaar. And now we find the devotees are fighting over whose room should be for who. And there is distrust and disharmony over who will get the wealth for whatever they want to use it for. He said it will be better if we tear off all the marble from that temple and use that money to print books. And he told Srila Prabhupada, if you ever get money, print books. If you want to please me, distribute my books. We can see how Srila Prabhupada, his only request to us is to simply engage us in the service of his spiritual master. That is parampara, disciplic succession. He told Srila Prabhupada that there is a fire in the mat. Be careful. There will be great disturbance. And that message went so deeply into Prabhupada's heart. Print books, distribute books. On that order of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, tens and millions of Vedic literatures have been translated, printed, and distributed in every continent of the world by Srila Prabhupada. That is the power of the transmission of the message between the bona fide spiritual master and his bona fide disciple. While Prabhupada was in Bombay, it was in 1936, Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Because at that time, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was very ill. It appeared quite obvious to everyone that Krishna would soon call him back to the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada wrote in his letter that you have many disciples who are sannyasis and brahmacharis who are just 24 hours a day with you and serving you. But I am a grihasta with so many other responsibilities. Please instruct me, how can I serve you? And Srila Prabhupada received a letter back from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada from Jagannath Puri. And in it, he repeated the same instruction he gave him in 1922 at their first meeting. That please take this message of Lord Chaitanya, the pure message of love of Godhead, and spread it throughout the world in the English language. This will be to your greatest benefit and to the greatest benefit of all you touch. It was just a couple weeks after that the closing pastimes of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Leela took place. He was in the Bhag Bazaar temple in Calcutta. And there his devotees from all around were having beautiful kirtan around him. On the morning of December 31st, 1936, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati asked one of his disciples, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, to sing for him the beautiful song of Narottam Das Thakur, Sri Rupa Manjari Pada, which is the eternal aspiration The mood of this song is the eternal aspiration of all true Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And then he asked another of his devotees to sing the beautiful Shikshastakam prayers. And then he told his devotees that they must serve one another, love one another, preach together, cooperate. And he told them to divide the management under an authority called GBC, Governing Body Commission, of about 10 or 12 men who will help to develop preaching strategies for his worldwide movement. So in this way, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati did what no one has done before. He planted the seed in Srila Prabhupada's heart. And that seed would ultimately come and bring fruits to all of our lives. It was on that day, December 31st, 1936, which according to the Vedic calendar corresponds with today, that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, amidst all his devotees chanting the holy names, with his last breath, he recited Krishna's holy name and returned to the eternal abode of Goloka Vrindavan. The disappearance of this Acharya is celebrated by us not only today, but every day, by being the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. Today we heard a beautiful class by Srila Prabhupada, where he spoke on this day. And he ended his lecture crying, weeping, thanking all of you for so kindly helping him, assisting him in the mission that his Guru Maharaj has given. So we can never calculate how fortunate we are. Anyone who helps this wonderful movement of ISKCON, we should know Srila Prabhupada is weeping in gratefulness to each of you for so kindly assisting him in this wonderful mission of performing the great compassionate work of spreading the glories of the holy name.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare.
Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki.